Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to another episode of the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Now, this week, we're going to be reporting live from sunny Arizona. And in between podcasts, I'm hoping to grab a little bit of vitamin D after escaping the cold British weather just for a few days. Now, one of the reasons I record this daily tech podcast and also take it on the road is to try and inspire listeners in over 165 countries where people listen to this show. Because I think very often that the tech media will tell you all about those inflated exit numbers and leave you thinking, all I need is that one idea and exit quickly. But that is a long way from the truth. And equally, it's a misleading school of thought that will leave many people on their own startup journey to feel like they're failing. And today, I want to tackle that subject head on. For example, Todd Davis is the founder of LifeLock. And a quick Google search about him and his journey with LifeLock will tell you that Symantec famously acquired LifeLock for over $2.3 billion a few years ago. And equally, Wikipedia will tell you that Todd won the Ernst and Young Entrepreneur of the Year for Top Emerging Company for Orange County and Desert Cities in 2009. And he was also awarded the CRM's Magazine Service Elite Award, the Arizona Business Leadership Association's Leadership Award, and the Arizona Business Journal 25 Most Admired CEOs in 2009. But none of this will tell you how he faced death, sat on the cliff's edge, not sure if his company would exist the following month during that infamous rollercoaster journey of startup life. So I caught up with him today to try and learn more about his personal story and hear about the thriving tech scene here at Phoenix, and also why businesses are setting up camp in the Grand Canyon State. So buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to Phoenix, Arizona, so you can join me chatting with Todd Davis in a coffee shop in Phoenix. There might be a little bit of traffic noise that you hear just to add to the ambience, and essentially have a listen to two guys grabbing a coffee together. So thanks for joining me today, Todd, in sunny Arizona at the GPEC event. But for listeners tuning in from all over the world, can you tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I am lucky enough to have been the founder and CEO of a company called LifeLock, which we started here in the States and initially was only available in the States, but became the fastest growing identity theft protection company in the world. We grew over 12 years. We grew to almost 700 million top line revenue, about 5 million subscribers in the U.S., and we've gone public, and then later were acquired by a company called Symantec that does Norton antivirus. Yeah. And so we had really a couple of great exits, but more importantly, the legacy I'm proud of is that we really were the first ones at the forefront of defining this new industry of identity theft protection, and especially in this age of data breaches and all our data being out there, that we really empowered consumers to take control of their own destiny, protect themselves, but have their back if something went wrong. And so I'm most proud of that legacy, that we were able to define this new industry and do it at such a high standard.
Fantastic. Now, you have a very rich history of working in the tech industry with several tech startups and also your time at Dell, of course. But what is it about Phoenix that is making it a hotbed for technology companies right now, especially compared to areas such as Silicon Valley?
Absolutely. So probably a couple of things, a couple of dynamics at work together. One of them, of course, is just the sheer competitiveness of our states. So California, pretty big tax burden, high cost of living. The competition from the tech companies, part of the time is just outbidding each other. What are the amenities and those kind of things, versus and Arizona has the ability to come attract much lower cost of living. But we've seen, this big infusion of that experienced, great talent. Our universities have really done a great job of stepping up. Before it was a lot of, here's the book, here's the, it's dated. I'm not getting cutting edge stuff that Silicon Valley was really allowing the younger folks to learn from a coding user interface, creative artwork, really see out on the horizon. Well, that's all changed now. And so we're really able to attract a high level of talent. I will say often, we did it with LifeLock, I see it with several companies I'm invested in now, kind of a symbiotic relationship. We may have a few key elements of talent that we will still look for in the Silicon Valley, have a base of operation there, but instead of paying a 50% premium on overhead and salaries, et cetera, where they have still lower living, standard of living because of the cost, we're able to just place out the talent, that the little bit of talent we might not be able to find in Phoenix. But now, because we've got critical mass of tech companies now, we've had enough success stories like a LifeLock, like a 41st Parameter, so many others now that have come out, WebMD, great technology companies that have had very successful exits with them. It really allows us to attract that same kind of talent. That standard of living, and I will also add that the school systems have dramatically improved. Arizona's been very open to charter public schools, so not the expensive private school. They're deemed public schools, but they're charter, which allows you to really be selective. What kind of education do you want for your children? And we have some of the highest rated charter schools in the nation here in Arizona, so that makes it even more attractive for people to come.
And that's one of the things that probably for our international listeners that don't fully understand, that there is this huge competitiveness, isn't there, between the states. It's not just US as one. It's
while we're all proud to be Americans, right? We are incredibly competitive, and we want our state, even to some degree our cities, will compete to who can attract the best talent, have the best standard of living, have a lower tax base, so we're not a burden on the families, but can give a high standard of living. Make sure the infrastructure is there, things like charter schools. So those are the kind of benefits. So instead of just being a cafeteria on site that's free food, or a massage therapist or dry cleaner, at the office, that's neat, great for a company. We will do it as state. We'll do it as cities. How do we find the best charter schools? How do we make sure the tax base? How do we give you some great options on, living, per square foot, what that looks like, what kind of home you can have for your family? It'll be very competitive, and you have to have everybody aligned, right? We have our legislators, our governor and our legislators have done a great job of saying Arizona's open for business. We're going to make it business friendly to come here to the state of Arizona, and we sometimes might even talk critically of California, how cumbersome, how regulatory, the tax. We might point that out every once in a while to attract other companies to come here.
And why not? Now, you did mention a few moments ago that Symantec famously acquired LifeLock for over $2.3 billion a few years ago. So what were the biggest lessons that you learned from that entire journey?
Oh, wow. So many great ones. Most importantly, probably that culture matters so much more than people can understand to the success of a company. So you can have a great idea, and there's been tons of great ideas as companies never got off the ground, because they didn't have the culture. And that starts leadership for sure, but it really diffuses through the entire organization, because you'll always have the challenges that come with it. I got to be one of the few people who was a founder, venture capital backed, took a company public, somehow will still remain CEO of a publicly traded company, even through good times and bad, and then the acquisition by Symantec. So it was really us staying focused on what our core value. It was actually pretty simple. Do what you should, not what you can.
Yeah.
It sounds elegantly simple. It's much harder to implement on a daily basis and hold people accountable to it. But by doing that and staying on mission, we could withstand. I mean, people have no idea. You can look at it now and talk about $2.3 billion acquisition, and it looks like, well, that was easy. You saw a need, you filled it, you had a big exit. I faced death. I stood on the cliff's edge 5-6 times that I was not sure we would exist the next month. Yeah. And so it was the culture. It was the dedication that allowed us to survive that.
And that's a story that we don't get to hear very often, is it? We all hear about the success and those exits, but not the 10-year overnight success story.
Well, that's just it, right? Everybody looks afterward and goes, that was so obvious. Of course you went after identity theft protection. It was the number one consumer complaint in America. Of course, you got consumers. Okay, well, of course, no one knew there was a problem. You had to, what we would call evangelize. I had to educate you that not only what's the real problem, but what's the solution. You should take steps to buy it even though you've never heard of us. And of course, here in the States, it's a big deal. I had to ask you, hey, are you worried about identity theft? Well, you've never heard of me, but if you'll give me your name, address, credit card number, birth date, and social security number, which, of course, here in the States, where you're told never give out your social security number. Yeah. I need all that to protect you. So if you'll just give that to me. That was not an easy ask, and to get millions and millions of people to trust us took $1 billion in marketing over those 12 years to build a brand. That's not an easy undertaking. So it looks easy after. You don't know about the times we almost grew ourselves to death, about the times my competitors were trying to kill me, not literally, but figuratively in the business, where we had legal fees in the tens of millions when we were a startup company 1 year, just to survive. But when you're focused, I call them decisive points. When you're focused on those decisive points, that is what we kind of pride ourselves in calling the great American story, right? This is the opportunity. Started from nothing, took it in, made over 100 millionaires when we went public. I mean, it's something I'm extremely proud of.
Fantastic. So as a Brit that has travelled 5,000 miles to attend the GPEC event, I'm fascinated by learning that the region is now home to over 300 tech companies. There's this real strong vibe over here that is undergoing this huge high-tech makeover. So what is it that you love about Phoenix, both from a personal level and also from someone right at the heart of the tech industry?
Yeah, so I do think you've really seen a cultural shift. So we really were known before Arizona. We got all of our C's about, cattle farming, cotton, copper. We were real estate investors would come here and buy real estate just from an investment standpoint. And so, and some level of tourism, right? Yeah. Certainly it's great weather. I won't make anybody feel bad who has to listen to the fact that you had to come to this these brutal conditions to meet me. But we had all that, but we didn't have that same nucleus. We didn't have that identity as a tech company like a Silicon Valley did. But it was those successes, and then we all kind of unified. So I know a lot of the people you'll be talking to this week. We are truly a community. We're proud of what we've built. We get together and talk about what the horizon of technology looks like and how we can work together, what's needed. The universities have done a great job, all of them. Grand Canyon, U of A, which is University of Arizona, Arizona State University. They've all done a great job of listening to the tech community and saying that we're missing these skills. You need to build programs that deliver us hireable graduates immediately. And they've done a fantastic job of building those programs and interacting with the private sector. You add that to the idea that we really did get a business-friendly change, certainly in our governor. Tell you a quick side story that just made me extremely proud. When Governor Ducey was first coming into office, he was going around meeting everyone to what's your job, what's your role, you run this department, you run this department. And we were about to have the Super Bowl, which of course is the big football event that's coming up. Well, we were going to have it here in Arizona, and he was going around and talking to the different people, and there was someone who ran weights and measures, the department, and he said, so, tell me what your job is, how do you measure success? He's a good business-oriented guy. And the person who was running the department said, well, I've got a whole sting operation set up for Uber and Lyft when the Super Bowl comes. And so we're really going to drop the hammer on Uber and Lyft. And Governor Ducey said, interesting. Walks out, goes to will someone remind me, what's my authority with this person? They said, well, they serve at the pleasure of the governor. Okay, you're fired. Why would we want to sting? Culturally changing, we should embrace these technologies. Yeah. And by doing that, he's attracted them to come do some of their development here, have some of their training centers do work here. Well, that's exactly what we were looking for. We want to know that there's not going to be someone who's trying to get in the way, stop innovation, stop change. We want someone who's going to embrace it and work with us. So that's a great, just microcosm example of how that culture is changing, why you now see 300 tech and growing companies.
And so much what you said there really resonates with me, because if we look at autonomous vehicles, for example, it's right at the heart of it here, isn't it?
At the very heart. Now, it helps that we also happen to be a very flat grid-like, there's mountains around you, but so for them to do the mapping, we did have a tragedy here. So we had one of the accidents that unfortunately someone lost their life, a bicyclist or someone crossing the street with a bicycle. That being said, we're losing a lot more people every day on our cars we drive ourselves.
Yeah.
And so, everyone took a pause. They took a step, the government and others, to say, let's make sure that we're really doing this development, this technology development. We're not taking unnecessary risk, but really to still embrace the fact that, it's not going to be easy. It's not always going to be pretty. I certainly don't want to make light of someone, who lost a family member this way. It's extremely tragic. But again, we're losing family members every day by doing it the way we've been doing it. I certainly would love more. I'm telling my parents now, it will be very soon you will no longer be driving.
Yeah. Oh, and I was chatting with the guys at Waze a few months ago, and they've got a very similar viewpoint. And they said they can actually see in 10 years from now, people will question why we ever let people drive vehicles because of the amount of accidents that they cause.
It's going to seem silly. And you see, and I love it. So you see total changes. Look at the industries that are going to change because of it. How the automotive industry, the insurance. Wrecks are going to go down.
Yeah.
So now you're seeing all the people who are primarily in the car insurance business knowing we have to change our business model because we can't charge the same premiums because the risk just went down dramatically.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how many people we're still going to give freedom to that can't get out and drive today? That we're going to say, okay, we'll make it available to you again.
Yeah.
I love how technology, that's why I've done so many technology startups. I love seeing technology change lives for the better.
So I always try and do a little research on all my guests, and when Googling you, Todd, I learned that you've got a golf simulator that you love to show off during entertaining in the basement, which is just a few feet from your own personal bar. So I've got to go there and ask you, is this something that you're still proud of? And wondered if you could tell me a little bit about it, if it is.
Sure. So look, I'm a guy who I jokingly tell the story, but had nothing 15 years ago, literally nothing. And so to be able to go from scratch with an idea, there was a brilliant co-founder who started it with me, but for me to be able to be CEO from day one and to go through this journey and then, be able to have the financial success that goes with it, I was able to build truly what, you would lay there and dream about.
Yeah.
And what sounded really good, that in June and July, it's not as much fun to play golf here. It's kind of warm. So if I'm going to be here, I can do it in the comfort of my 70-degree basement and walk over to my bar between swings, have a cocktail. So this is the dream come true, right, for an Arizona guy. And then the rest of the other 9 months of the year when you can really get out and have fun, I'll do it on the golf course. But my game doesn't get too rusty because of it. I was able to build truly my dream house.
So if we have someone listening to this conversation anywhere in the world who's inspired by your story, what's the best advice that you'd pass on to someone at the beginning or any stage of their own personal tech startup career?
So probably the thing I try to share most that I wish someone had probably enlightened me as I started my journey, there are probably three things most specifically. First, please be able to say what makes you decisively better than anyone that's out there, and whatever your solution, whatever you're bringing from your business, whatever that value prop, concisely be able to articulate what makes you dramatically different, almost your unfair competitive advantage. If you just say, well, we get better customer service or we can do it a little cheaper, you do not have a sustainable business model. So really be true to yourself. What is my competitive advantage that I can build on? Then number two, you're going to get people who are going to come, and the first people you're going to be able to hire are your friends and families and loved ones that will believe in your vision, in your dream. Be ready. You're going to outgrow part of them, and your responsibility as the leader is to make some tough decisions. And it's finding that balance between loyalty and your role as the leader of the company. I didn't always do it well. Sometimes I stayed too long, but I've also fired best friends and cousins, and I guess it would be now my ex-wife. I'm sure that contributed to the reason she's my ex-wife, because I fired her when she was still my wife. But you had to make hard decisions, right?
Yeah.
And you owe it to everybody in the organization to be able to do that. But finally, and most importantly, define what I refer to as decisive points. So there's a whole lot of goals you have. You know what you want to look like 5 years from now. You know what you want sales to look like and revenue, expenses, those kind of things. Those are all good goals. You can miss those slightly. A decisive point, there's probably only 2 or 3 in any given 12-month period that have to happen for you to be successful. That if you do not accomplish them, it can have catastrophic events to your future success. So be, again, brutally honest with yourself about what are those decisive points. Never miss a decisive point. You may miss revenue. In fact, you're going to miss revenue every once in a while. Yeah. Right? You're going to have expenses be higher than you want every once in a while. You're going to get into a bad partnership every once in a while. You can survive all of those. Define decisive points as what has to happen, and then every single day as a leader, you've got to make some movement toward that goal. You have to, even if it's inches, make sure you're making some level of movement to that decisive point, and your probability of success and survival goes up dramatically if you can keep that laser focus. Don't get mired in the weeds of what the lease agreement for your space looks like. $1 per square foot is not, if that's the difference between whether your company made it or not, something went terribly wrong.
So what's next for you, Todd? Is there anything else you can share with me today about your plans for 2019 and, of course, beyond?
Sure. So, I can say definitively, even though they say never, I will never take an operating role again for day-to-day, because I know what the sacrifice means to be successful. And my loving family put up with a lot while I was gone, trying to build a company. And so I love the challenge of trying to be a great husband and great father. By the way, being a great husband and father is much different than being a really good one when you can be one. Those are very different roles. Takes a lot of energy to be a great father and husband. So that's really now the legacy I want to leave besides the business. I certainly invest in typically technology startups. I'm most motivated to invest in people. So people I know, people I believe in, who have high character, who I can trust to be high probability of successful. And then I try to get back to the community. So I sit on several charity boards, Vero Neurological, Teach for America, something called Conquer Paralysis Now. So where I can try to get back from the community, take some of our experiences and some of our financial fortune that we've been able to build and give back and try to pay back. I'm extremely blessed. I don't deserve the great life I have, but I'm not giving it back, so I'll just try to be nice and be thankful for it.
Well, a huge thanks for joining me today. Before I let you go, can you just remind the listeners of where they can find you online, or maybe even contact a member of your team if they've got any questions about our conversation and what the great work that's happening here in Phoenix?
Sure, so it's pretty easy. My email is just lifelockceo@gmail.com. The LifeLock guys let me keep that one. I thought that was pretty nice with the acquisition. So lifelockceo@gmail.com. They can ping me, and if there's something they want to catch up on. There's not really much of a team anymore unless you deem my wife my boss or my 4-year-old daughter. She's my chairman of the board. My wife's my boss. So that's pretty much the team these days.
Love it. Well, I think you've experienced so much success. You've been on an inspirational journey, but it's not about that success for me. It's like you said a few moments ago, 15 years ago you had nothing, and it's that journey, and now you're grateful for everything that you've achieved and protect that fiercely. So a big thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much. And I hope, sharing some of the story inspires someone to take that chance. It was well worth it. There was nothing more rewarding.
What an inspirational journey Todd has been on. And I love how he pointed out that 15 years ago he actually had nothing. I'm so glad he took the time to come and speak with me while I'm in Phoenix, and also for his honesty on that 10-year overnight success journey. And no matter where you're listening to me in the world, if you're on your own personal tech startup journey, no matter what stage, I'd love for you to let me know about what your thoughts, your takeaways were on today's conversation, and indeed hear more about your personal startup journey. And if you're not even on it, I'd love just to know if today's conversation just lit the spark that was within. And as always, you can do that by emailing me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. You can get me on Twitter @NeilCHughes. And I've also signed up on Instagram recently with this same username, Neil C. Hughes. Now, I have seen a number of autonomous self-driving cars while I've been here in Phoenix, and it's easy to see why it's such a hotbed for testing with these incredibly long roads. And remember, if you're in town and you want to grab a hot coffee or a cold beer, feel free to give me a shout. However, I'm afraid that's it for today's episode. I'm going to try and find out some more great tech stories that I can share with you while I'm over here. So come and join me again tomorrow and we'll do it all again. But until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.